Hi, my name is Floyd, and thank you for stopping by. We're going to be talking about Inventor Me. So we can go to the next slide. So quickly to go over the abstract, the problem of this organization can cause people to lose track of their items, and the objective is to solve this problem. We can go to the next slide. So basically, losing important items can cause people to lose a lot of money and can potentially hurt relationships. And this is a very easy problem to solve, so it should be solved. So that's the goal of the app. We can go to the next slide. So basically, we're going to solve this problem by taking a picture, where a user would take a picture of their item, and after taking the picture of it, they'll input various attributes, and we're going to focus on security to prevent the loss of data for the user's items. So now hand it off to background.
So on the background, we wanted to do this app because it is hard for people to keep track of all the information related to their items and projects. So with this, the user is going to be able to easily retrieve all the information related to the item. We wanted to make it flexible in order for the user to not only use it for objects, but also for bills, projects, and even assignments. The next slide, please? So for the related work, there's already an app called Sortly. Sortly is an inventory app that uses photos and different folders in order to keep track of your items. But what they don't count is that nowadays part of our life is stored digitally. So Inventor Me is going to let the user decide whatever they want to store. This could be receipts, payments, even files on a computer. The flexibility of Inventor Me is going to make the user be able to store what they want, not only working with physical environment, but also with a digital one. Next slide, please.
All right, so as Esteban mentioned, we're going to have mobile application and then also web application. So for the iOS application, we're going to be using Xcode and Swift. For the Android application, we're going to be using Android Studio and Java. And those are basically the standards that developers use to build iOS and Android apps. For the web application, we're going to be using HTML and JavaScript, which I'm sure everyone is already familiar with. And then for the database, we'll be using SQLite. And then we can move on to the next slide.
Okay, so for the design, we have three major pillars or themes of our design. We have minimalism, accessibility, and flexibility. For minimalism, we will design a well thought out foundation, kind of the bedrock of all of our code, with less reusable code or more reusable code. This tends to lead to less bugs and less bloat when it comes to our overall design and architecture. We will also use standardized guidelines from all three of the major manufacturers. These are for both UI and how they work with their APIs. So for flexibility, this will be key for greater diversity of our app, and it's really just the right thing to do in general, bringing a larger community to our application. And for flexibility, we will be using cross-platform. That means across all the major manufacturers. It'll be cloud synced, of course, and we'll, for development, use a hybrid between waterfall and agile. This means we can have creative details, but the overall workings of the app will still remain. For requirements, we'll have a backend with a database and cloud sync with the AWS and SQLite. And then we'll also have three major clients, so iOS, Android, and a web application for covering all the bases, and then a ported Mac app from the iOS application. And there are very many use cases, so you can list all the items, keep data for all of the items. It's an easy way to organize and track them. You can also take pictures or scan the items for easy input. And then next, I'm going to hand it over to architecture.
So as previously mentioned, we will be implementing our application across three platforms, iOS, Android, and we'll keep the same structure across all of the apps so that users can transfer between different devices and feel familiar with the product. We'll give the users access to search, add, update, and edit all of their entries. and we will also be launching it on Amazon Web Services so that it can be maintained on the cloud. Can we go on to the next slide, please? So for risks, some security concerns are stolen identity and data breaches. So we will be hashing all of the information in order to securely store all of the data onto the database. And also server shutdowns is a concern, as users won't be able to access their data. So in order to prevent that, we will be using containers in the cloud services, and that will immediately reboot any shutdown servers. On to the next slide, please.
So for our first task, we're going to understand the problem and objective. Then we're going to implement the database tables, then create a sign-in page. Then our sign-in functionality is going to route to the home page, which stores a session key. Then we're going to create a home page, and our home page, we're going to have display cards of the items in the database, and each item is going to have a delete functionality, a search functionality, and a help functionality. Next, we're going to create the form page for adding and modifying an entry. We can go to the next page. Then we're gonna implement the form functionality, which submits to a database and populates the form when editing. Then we're gonna implement the picture upload and scan functionality for like barcodes and receipts. Add the notifications and create the hamburger menu for categories for those completed date and settings. Next, we're gonna implement the categories and folder page and implement the completed date and settings page. And the last few tasks are going to be testing to make sure our app is working correctly. And what we don't fix in time, we're just going to document any bugs. Go on to the next page. Next page. These are the dates we plan to do for our task, which I covered in the last slide, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. But you can see some of the dates. But we can go to the next page. So our design document will show like major software components for our application. Our database scheme and initial data will show all the database constraints for each table, as well as show some example data. Our JavaScript and HTML for the web application, then Swift native files for the iOS application, and Java code for the Android application. And our final report will show where our app stands overall, the performance, and where we would like it to be. Next.
And lastly, our facilities and equipment. Because of COVID, we don't have much choice when it comes to facilities, so we all be working from home separately. That we might have the couple people that are working together on like the mobile applications or the web page to possibly work together in person. That's only if needed. We should be safe with that. And then for our equipment, we will all be using our own separate laptops and desktops that we have at home, and we'll be using GitHub to be able to share code between each other. And that is it. Thank you for listening to our presentation over our IDEA inventory.